I have a very special guest. She's a director and producer. She's an Indigenous storyteller. Her name is Hanelle Harris, and we're here to talk about some very awesome and amazing things above everything that's going on. But before we start, I wanted to start off with a prayer to get this conversation well sourced. So I'll start that off with us. Our loving Father in heaven, thank you for your love, thank you for your guidance, and thank you for all that you do for us. Please protect us and guide us throughout our day, and please protect the mana of our conversation that we're about to have, and also guide us to use the right words so that the messages being told today are being told and guided through you. Thank you for your love, and please protect all those who need your protection. And we say this in your beloved Son, Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Welcome to the show.
Kia ora, tēnā koe.
You know what's really cool is this is your first podcast.
It's my first podcast. You took my V-plates.
Yeah. I'm so happy that you decided to go on. And this is all aligning, right? Like, could you tell us about how this is aligned for you?
Well, I guess there's been a bit of social media, what do you even call it? Uproar over the last couple weeks, which has found yourself and myself in a bit of the public eye amongst our Nesian community. And so, yeah, I just feel like the timing's aligned for us to talk about our experiences over the last 2 weeks. And I think from both tangata whenua Māori and Samoan, especially a Aotearoa-based Samoan perspective, like some of the bigger issues that are being brought up in our community around the discourse that actually me and you are living through.
Exactly.
We just got to worry about,
absolutely,
what we're going through. We're the ones living it at the end of the day.
Exactly. And I think it's more than just the drama. Like, I feel like a lot of people are seeing it as drama, but there's larger conversations that are more important than what's happening, because we are just the example.
Yes.
Of what actually needs to be talked about. I feel like we've been put out there to so that people can think about conversations that are important. But before we get into that, could you tell us about yourself?
Ko Hanelle Te Hohi Pirarangi Māori Harris tōku ingoa. On my mum's side, I hail from Ngāpuhi from my koro, and my nan, I hail from Kawero and Okiri Falls, which is in Rotorua. So Ngāpuhi, Ngāti Tūwhareatua, Ngāti Awa, Ngāti Pikiao, and down to Te Aitanga o Hauiti, which is Uawa. And on my father's side, I whakapapa to Lebanon. So yeah, I've got quite a mixture of whakapapa. I was born in Tokoroa. My mum was really young when she fell pregnant with me, and because my father was from a Catholic Maronite family, it was, taboo to have children out of wedlock. So my story began as a planned abortion, and it was my grandmother, my mother's mother, who told my mother to come home from Sydney and have me here in Aotearoa. So I was born here in Tokoroa on the 10th of April, 1990. And I lived here for a couple years with my grandparents. My mum was, she was only in her early 20s, and then her and my dad got back together. They took me back to Aussie, and for pretty much the first 8 years of my life, I grew up with my Lebanese whānau, so going to Catholic Maronite kura, my first 2 years speaking Arabic, and when my parents separated, my mum sent me back to my grandparents, and that's when I came to Aotearoa in 97, and we moved to the far north with my grandparents. And then all of a sudden I was now learning about Te Ao Māori, and I was so different as a child, because no one knew what Māoris were in my Lebanese family, and Māoris didn't know what Lebanese people were here in Aotearoa. So And so I grew up in Kaikohe in the far north, which is a very impoverished town. Went to Decile 1 schooling, and when I was 17, my media studies teacher, Susie Poynton, she sent me to drama school in Unitec. So that's how I got into, film and television and theatre, was through Unitec. Became a mum at 21, myself, to my son, he whakapapas to Samoa. And it's really important for me to make sure he grows up balanced. And I see how the reo of both cultures actually makes him stronger in both his identities. So it's, something I'm very staunch about with my son, that he understands tikanga Māori and whaasamoa. So, we try and get him into everything he can, and two babies, and they're and they whakapapa to Tūhoe in the Cook Islands actually as well. So, raising the next generation of Nesians, being a mama is a big part of my identity, but being a wahine, really. But yeah, that's me.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that story with us. And I know on the interactions that I've had with you, I noticed you're a very spiritual person, and spirituality is like such a wide conversation. So I'm interested, what is your understanding of God?
Well, as I said, I was baptized Maronite Catholic. When I moved with my grandparents, we were charismatic Christian. My koro was actually a pastor, and he was actually Brian Tamaki's shepherd. And it really broke my koro's heart. I remember going to, Destiny Church, and my koro saying, I never taught him all of this. And so, it's, so interesting for me to see kind of the evolution of certain Christian churches that, I've grown up with. When I came into my 20s is when I really start to learn about, New Age angelism, and I had some Tongan friends and their whānau were all Baha'i, so I looked into that for a bit. Ultimately, when you start to go on your whakapapa journey as a Māori, you will find that your whakapapa will take you straight back to our atuatanga as Māori, which are the children of Rangi and Papa. And so, I guess my current understanding of Io, of God, as Māori, Io for us is a balanced being. The E is the feminine, or the E is the masculine, and the O is the feminine. And so, Io is actually our supreme being, our God, our creator, and then Rangi and Papa and the children kind of come from that source. So, getting back to my own indigeneity, and as a child, I was actually quite gifted. I would predict things as a child. I could never talk about it with my grandparents, because they, thought those things were devilish. But I did have aunties that were matakite and tohunga and had kept all of those old Māori ways. And so, I just feel like I was drip fed it as a child. And then as I grew up, and I just thought, I don't know that I fully believe in Christianity. Like, I believe in Jesus Christ because, I'm from Lebanon. I whakapapa to the Holy Land. We know that he was performing miracles in Lebanon. So I can't say Jesus isn't real. Jesus is real to me. Jesus is a tupuna, but so is Ruakinana and Te Kōti, And so my current understanding of God is that God is an all-loving God. And when God says, that God makes in God's perfect image, to me that is that God gave a representation of God's self to every people. And what I'm saying about Christianity is that came from the Middle East, it came from Arab people, and then it was digested through a Roman lens. And so, so it's a really I think, a complicated relationship for a lot of us brown people. A lot of us have religious trauma, growing up through churches and things like that. But for me, God's current face to me is an Indigenous face. And my great times for grandfather, Hamiora Pure, he was famously quoted when the Catholic Church asked him to go back because he was a teacher. He left because he realized they were using the church to raupatu our land, to steal our land. So he left the Catholic Church. He went back to Tohungatanga, and when the Catholic Church went and asked for my koro back, he said, your ancestor is money, mine is rangi and papa. You stick to yours and I'll stick to mine.
When you're thinking about like Christianity, right? You're talking about like the religious institutions.
Yes.
Are you talking about in that scope?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's maybe like at the moment in the world, people aren't ready to let go of the idea that some of these churches are institutions that were actually built to steal Indigenous lands. There's nothing wrong. The scriptures are beautiful. The scriptures are something that everyone should look at and read and discuss and practice in their families. But, if you look into the doctrine of discovery, and Tina Ngata does amazing work, we can see how actually, the Roman Catholic Church was set up to steal Indigenous lands, and a lot of Christian denominations came from that church. And the doctrine of discovery gave precedence for all of those churches to come into lands like Aotearoa, like Samoa, like all of our islands, and bring with them missionaries. And the missionaries brought with them the Christian institution. And yes, we connect with it because we're a godly people inherently. Of course, that's still real for us, just like, Christianity is real for our Black people, our, Mexican people. But there's something called syncretism. Have you heard of that?
No, what is that?
It's when you take two cultures and you basically, they merge together, but the dominant culture prevails. So in this case, Roman Catholicism, you mix that together with, Te Ao Māori. It was called Ratana. It was called Ringatu, because we had those same faiths come, Christian faiths come here. You go to South America, you can see the same thing. You go to the islands, you see e whakasa, it's the same thing. It's the syncretism, it's the merging of the two, and the dominant in this case being the Christian institutional doctrine and the Indigenous peoples of the land. And then you fuse together those cultures and it creates something that feels authentic to the Indigenous person, because its roots are Indigenous to a degree, but it still has a superseding dominant culture. And that's generally the Christian institution.
See, I've always liked to think of it as like, I don't like to dog on churches so much, but I do understand their whole structure being around money. Like, I understand that concept of it, but I feel like sometimes the church is needed for some people because their faith journey begins from something that happens at church. But then in saying that, I'm not going to neglect all of the bad stuff that happens in church and how they've used people to, drive their own agendas and stuff. Do you think of it in a duality sense like that, or you kind of just like the church needs to go down?
Oh, totally. I wouldn't be close to God if I hadn't grown up in Sunday school with grandparents who were absolutely dedicated to the church. My grandmother didn't have her reo, she had it beaten out of her, but she loved the church, and she, her pepeha, she would write ko ihu karaiti taku tipuna, and I'm like, that's not your tipuna is too whare toa, but still there was still, goodness, my grandparents held on to the goodness. They were very biblical people. They were very, followed Christianity, and I think that stopped my family from being in cycles of like alcoholism and we didn't have that. And so I could see how the church gave us a good foundation as a family, but it did also replace other things like whakapapa, so duality.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Because I feel like a lot of the times people are always trying to pick and choose a side, but understanding both it's actually beneficial for everyone's personal life, because it gives you a sort of peace that you don't have to always be fighting in between both. But I like what you said about scriptures, like the Bible scriptures, because my faith journey has been a wild one. It's been a wild one.
I would love to hear it, please.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness. My parents was very strict religious upbringing, and I'm actually thankful now as an adult that my parents had, forced me to kind of do these things as when I was young, because now that I'm older, I'm starting to appreciate why they taught me different things, because I'm facing situations in adulthood that I now have values instilled in me a long time ago that has kept me grounded and rooted. So when I was like 18, I kind of didn't like church. I was like, oh, why do we have to go all the time? Rebellious phase came in. And then now I'm like a mom. I have a 6-year-old girl. Scripture and Bible and things that my parents have raised me up on is what has kept me grounded. I'm not so much close to church, but I always try to look for answers. And you know how the Bible, like Proverbs, right? It says, do not do this, but it never gives you a why. My entire journey, probably from like 20 to 29 now, the why has been explained through my life experiences. So I guess that's the beauty of faith, is that, even though the Bible is kind of like, this is what's right, this is what's wrong, it doesn't give us an in-depth PhD of why it's wrong or why it's right. You have to have faith. And my own life experiences have proven to me why the Bible, why scripture is valuable. So now I'm on a spiritual journey on my own connection with God, and like God is like a friend, right? It's your best friend. And if you have a best friend, you talk to them in the morning, you wake up, you text them, or even your husband or your partner. If you're going to make a decision, what should I eat today? You could have a conversation with your partner or your friend. And I feel like in life, that's how God should be connected to you. It is who you wake up to, who you speak to. If you have a random thought, so that's how I'm seeing God right now. And I have seen the shift in myself of how if I went through the situations I went through this year, like 2 years ago, I would not last. I would not survive. But I think having a spiritual connection with God is important for everyone on a personal level as well. And the church can help guide you there with education around scripture, community, meeting someone else from a different walk of life who maybe resonate with your experience. But yeah, scripture is important. It's just hard to have that conversation with people because they think if you're attacking the church, you're attacking everything under the church. But there's so many layers to it that need to be talked about. And especially in the Samoa community, an attack on Christianity could be an attack on the entire nation. And it's a hard conversation to have because when you talk about it, things that, for example, sexual abuse in the church, how women are treated in church, how our LGBTQ community are treated in the church as well. Those are hard conversations to have. And usually you'll just be like excluded or like, don't talk about it. It's not good to talk about. So this is hard for me to have. This is a hard conversation for me to have on camera. But I think also in that, I realized that I don't feel the need to speak up on it because I trust in God. And I trust that there will be a way he will help me address those issues. And I think this is one of them.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I totally feel how, the church and the culture are, as you say, like one and the same, and I guess for me, I think, like, what did Māori have? We had pūrākau, we had the stories of our tūpuna, and actually, from the wānanga I've been taught, Maui Tiki Tiki, which is Maui Ti'i Ti'i, was actually born in Samoa.
Yes.
And, so we're from an Indigenous lens, like, I still go to the Bible. Like, especially if like a scripture catches my eye, I'm like, God's put that in my path, I'll meditate on that. I guess from a Te Ao Māori perspective, we are a and rather than a but one or the other. And like the most spiritual Māori I know are so inquisitive about every faith, every culture, and it's actually about finding the commonalities between scripture and pūrākau. And when I was studying Baha'i, the thing I loved about that particular faith was progressive revelation. So they believe that as humans we're evolving, and so when Moses came with the Old Testament, he taught us an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But when Jesus came, Jesus taught us in the New Testament, when someone slaps your cheek, give them the other side. And that's because as humans we'd evolved from only being able to see revenge to being able to see grace and forgiveness. And so Baha'i believe that there are prophets sent at different times of human civilization with the updated messages from God. And so I'm influenced by so many hahi or faiths, but really at the core of it, Te Ao Māoritanga allows me to say all of it is possible because Io, God, is that great that God would find so many different ways to connect with us, whether it's through a scripture or through a manu, a bird in the sky, and I just I'm really like keen for us as people of Moana Nui a Kiwa to look at our shared whakapapa in atuatanga, because Tangaroa and Tangaloa, they're the same atua, and like those pūrākau, those stories actually have hidden messages about how we can overcome life's challenges too.
That's beautiful. And I also like what you said about revenge. It's a common thing to always just want to get back at someone. And I don't know if you find this, but do you find people think you're weird because you're not out to get other people? Like if bad things happen to you, you kind of just like, okay, you stand firm on what you say, but you won't go out of your way to try and purposely hurt that person.
I don't need to. My tipuna are pretty ruthless. My ancestors are ruthless. I don't want that person to be hurt.
Yeah.
Because I've seen it and I get worried. I legit get worried for people that want to muck around. But, that's just, my grandmother always taught me that. Be careful, you don't know what family that person comes from. And I've kept that as an adult, like you don't know who you're speaking down on or who you're putting bad energy out there towards. You don't know who's protecting them. You don't know who their ancestors or their, what gifts are on their whānau. And so, this is where we have to start to like think about the tapu in our wā as people. We got to take it back there. There was very, it was all based around mana, and like maintaining the mana of each person. But I've never, and jealousy is something, I've never really understood either, which is why I didn't know it was happening half the time. But you know what? The most jealous person be your best friend sometimes, really watch who you keep in your circle, because there's a lot of monitoring spirits out there, and
absolutely.
You just gotta just have some spiritual boundaries.
Exactly. And you understand karma, you understand karma, and I understand it too. And that's the root of why I don't want to treat people bad, because if you understand it to the level of how you understand it, then it would put more emphasis on I have to act right now. I have to, where I feel like if people don't understand it, they just run amok. And they're so reliant on self, like I can do this and I can move these things here so that this person ends up in this position. And it's dangerous. It's to me it's like you're exposing your soul into a spiritual realm, and that's where the war is actually happening. And everything you do here, whether it doesn't seem like a big deal, is actually a really big deal. But those are just my thoughts on it. And I wanted to touch in you being misunderstood. Funny story, my middle name is Matauina i Tangata, and then I told my nana what my name meant, and she goes, I'll be misunderstood by a lot of people and I'll be talked about by a lot of people. So when that's the origin of my name as well. So you're a person who's often misunderstood. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I think that goes back to my name as well. So when I was born, my grandmother's sister actually claimed me at birth. She was a tohunga, she was a healer, and yeah, she was a very superstitious woman. And her name was Isabel Te Hohipera. So my middle name is Te Hohipera, which means the hospital. But growing up, I was told by tohunga and elders that it was a place for the sick, the dead, and those being born. And so because of this nanny of mine, Nanny Isabel, who named me, and all of the things that had encountered her path. So she was Waitangi Tribunal claimant number 21, which was the Tarawera River, which is the Black Drain down in Kawero, is, you know, regarded as one of the biggest biggest disasters, toxic waste disasters in the history of New Zealand. You know, she fought that paper mill her whole life, and the whole town hated her. She was, you know, she was despised throughout the town because she was trying to, you know, get the mill shut down, which meant that hundreds of families would not have, you know, jobs. And she was really just trying to fight for our tipuna first and foremost, because the paper mill was desecrating our wahi tapu, our sacred land, which is where our tupuna and who are very, like, you're talking back in the 1400s, you know, these tipuna bones have been there. Koiwi and Tasman Pulp Mill have come and put all of the toxic sludge right in, you know, Roto Iti Paku, which is our sacred waters. And so now that paper mill is closed. They've all gone back overseas. All the money's been made. There's health deformities in the town, you know, there's cancer everywhere. Children are born with, you know, all sorts of disabilities. And yeah, they've just made all their money. They've desecrated this whenua and this awa, and they've basically, you know, left the town impoverished. My queer Te Hohipera is not around to hear people say sorry, that she was right, you know, she was just crazy town lady for decades. But yeah, so Te Hohipera really being the mauri of that queer in her life, and so I have to honour her and how staunch she was, and how would she want me to respond to people who were trying to takahi on my mana. You know, she never let anybody get away with, you know, putting her down or nothing like that. She's a very feared woman, actually. But, you know, rangi Māori actually comes from my koro. So he put that on, which is like, is peace, but it's one of the most used words within Māori scripture. And to be rangi Māori is it's more about a space of mind. It's to be in harmony. And I think people have a misunderstanding of peace and harmony being love and light, but it's not. Actually, true harmony is balance. And balance can only occur when, you know, all of the sick and everything is out there. So yeah, my name is a big part of my blueprint and what I hold on to when I feel like I'm being really misunderstood. But yeah, living my purpose.
Yeah, and you are living your purpose.
And you are living your purpose. And I love when we caught up, you said, you know, I said, I'm so sorry about everything that's been happening. And you're like, I'm happy to be the sacrificial lamb. Those were the very words you used. And then learning about your name, you know, and yeah, the one that's going to be misunderstood. And it's like,
it's been bestowed upon us since birth.
It's an anointing.
Yeah. And so, yeah, there's a lot of things going on online. I mean, my humble video just passed, and that was a crazy week for me. And people you've worked with in the past have gone onto podcasts, have said some pretty sad things about you. And for me, when I heard about it, there wasn't actually much outrage when these podcasts released. A lot of people just accepted it, and they're like, oh, they're talking about someone. And no one said anything but about what they were actually doing, like speaking down on someone. And I guess maybe everyone got caught up in the, oh, it's a podcast, it's a safe space for them to share, their experiences and things like that. And now you've responded to these claims that they've been making about you. And honestly, I give my heart to you and love to you, because that's such a hard thing to go through. Having people you've previously worked with, they could call you. And another thing I don't like is that they allowed these people to share those stories on a platform. But like I said, there's a lot of intersections in regards to Western media, podcasting, and cultural elements that should have been the more respectful way to approach something. How are you, first of all, now that this whole thing is happening?
It's weird because it's like I've already lived through it. It's I feel like it probably looks way more dramatic for everyone else.
Yeah.
Because I've just come from a whole week of being up north. You know, it was the 189th year of the signing of He Whakaputanga. So while all these videos are out there going viral, I'm standing in front of my iwi and actually, talking face to face with my people and my elders. So for me to put a video up online is nowhere near compared to actually what I was doing last week. So I found an immense amount of mana being back home on my tūranga waiwai up in Ngāpuhi, and it was just the perfect place for me to be with all this drama, because as I said, like, I was raised on those streets in Kaikohe and gossip. And
I don't mean to intersect. When the drama happened with my humble video, I was in Samoa.
Great.
Crazy.
See?
Back on the land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eel God was just like, let's just get you guys some grounding.
Yeah.
Because some shit's going to go down. But hey, look at how strong our roots were.
Yeah.
They were planted all the way down deep. So, everything's still going. But from the beginning, I was like, nah, I'm going to speak out and I'm going to do it my way. I don't care who disagrees with me. I don't care if I say the wrong thing. Like, who has time to curate themselves when this is happening in real time? I didn't actually realize Gabby's one had been out for the last 5 months. How it actually happened was I'd called Madeline Chapman out on Twitter, and someone had replied to that and said something like, sorry to hear about what happened with Gabby. And I said, that's private. How do you know about that? Oh, there was a podcast. I was like, wait, what podcast? I hold up. And then, pretty much just like saw the podcast that day, and it was probably like, I don't even know, like the next day I put out the response, maybe even that day. I actually just filmed it. I didn't think about what I was going to say, or
Straight off the cuff.
I thought about it a little bit and what do I want to get across, but it was pretty off the cuff, and just trusting really trusting God, to be honest, and being like, yep, this is happening, like, don't muck around, like get clear that energetic cord and just do it in a way that is true to you. And so
and honestly, I'm not, to me, that should have been a private conversation. Did they have a private conversation with you?
Well, Gabby and I did mediation with some other people from our collective, and after that incident we actually hung around after the mediation for a bit, and it was very, like, in my view, was very healing. We'd said how much we'd missed each other, and we were really catching up. It was quite like tender, like sweet, and and then afterwards, like, we were all going to sign something just to say we weren't going to talk about it, but she didn't sign it. So that's how, I guess, that, just to address that side of it. But when Baba, the last time we saw her was when we were planning to release our show. We'd asked her to come and meet with us, and yeah, again, she seemed pretty normal. After the protest, so, we've been protesting since CIS, which has been just over 2 years.
Yeah.
We actually sent out an email to all of the cast and crew, which just expressed our aroha to them that we were really sorry. That's how we had to release the show, but that things had happened last minute. We found out, we were going to be behind a paywall. That was never the understanding, and that when the time came that we wanted to, sit down and talanoa with everyone, but if anyone wanted to had any questions or concerns, that they could come to us, which was, there were 4 of us in the producing collective. We only heard back from one person, and that was the cultural safety person, who was also an actor, who was, part of this group again. And yeah, he rang and lost it on one of our producers. And so that was the only expression of any distaste or disharmony or upset from anyone from the cast and crew. So everyone was actually given a chance to respond by email, message, call. And then when we were protesting, Bubba did ask what was the protest about, and obviously we've had that short little exchange, which I put in my response video to Bubba. But in my opinion, no one ever reached out. They did go on a podcast, and I mean, you can tell that they've talked about what they were going to talk about before, so everything's kind of crafted around creating that drama. And so that's what you said about putting things out there. They put out the tono for a fight.
Exactly.
And now that's what we've gotten ourselves into. But I refuse for it to be nothing but a good experience, because we all must learn from this as a people. It's humiliating that we're all fighting like this, even with what's happened with you. That's not all Samoans, but the week earlier everyone was literally coming for you. We just have to be ready to look in the mirror at some point,
Absolutely. And just my opinion, it doesn't matter what actually happened, and I'm a bit sad that you have to explain these things to people, not because you're right or because you're wrong. It's because that's supposed to be information that's meant to be dealt with the people involved. And in the Samoan culture, we have something called soalo pule. So that's how we resolve things. Like, we sit down with each other, we sort things out, and then it's done privately. And like you said, they went onto a podcast and made that public. So I think there might be a lack of cultural knowledge on how to solve these kinds of issues. And to me, it was very malicious to even spread lies. And it doesn't matter who had beef with who, it's how we handle it that matters. It's that core principle of handling it. Because you're breaking down someone else's mana, and they have children, and it's on a public platform, and I think that's a whole nother conversation as well.
In Te Ao Māori we have hohau te rongo, which is about bringing back the rongo, bringing back the peace and the balance. So we have answers within all of our cultures to have been able to deal with it in an indigenous way, and one that wasn't it's very of the radio world to go out there and call it out. It's like, what in the Cat Williams is this? Kind of thing. And I think that those podcast platforms must be held responsible, because they knew what they were doing. They had the whala, they had the whāriki, so where's their responsibility in terms of being the ones that were facilitating those talanoa to actually, they can't just awkward, no, you've actually got to front up and say, man, look at my role that I have played in this. But yeah, I mean, some people don't want peace because they're not at peace with themselves, and it's easier to be angry at someone else than it is to actually look at your own
Exactly.
BS.
Yeah. And they're probably talking about you because talking about themselves is not the best thing to do.
I mean, you know, and that's the thing is like, absolutely. People talk about people that they see something and that scares them,
Yeah.
that triggers them. And growing up in Kaikohe, I was always different as a child. I always have been. I think people just need to get to a point where they go, what is it about that person that triggers me? What do I need to work on? You know, because again, when we talk about institutions, the three things that keep us back as a people is judgment, shame, and guilt. And so we're constantly judging others, we're constantly in a state of shame, and we're constantly guilty. So that, of course, we're all going to be disconnected from God because we're constantly belittling our own mana just within our own mind, you know. And so yeah, it's like I would really encourage people, just be mindful of who you sit around and what they talk about. If they're talking about other people, get up and go to another table.
Exactly.
Go to another table. You know, we don't have time.
Yeah. And I think people don't look at that seriously enough. Gossiping, and how dangerous it can be. Like, I understand venting to someone because you've been through hurt, a trusted person, but to go around spreading information that was only shared privately with you to other people, that's so dangerous. People get hurt in the process. You're living proof of that happening in real time, and everyone can see. That conversation is important.
Yeah. And I'm not going to pretend like I am above or was above that behavior, because definitely in my 20s, I think this is a gossip and rumors and, you know, BS stirring. I think it's very just part of New Zealand culture. I've always said that it's a British colonial overhang, you know. We learn how to defame people's characters through a very colonized lens. And so I definitely see how I took part in that when I was younger, and I distinctly remember going on my healing journey and identifying that behavior was really draining, and I would just feel it in my body. Like, I would be hanging out with mates, and then afterwards I'd be like, fuck, I'm drained. And then I would reflect and go, oh, it's because we sat there and talked about all these people, and like, what did I get out of that? You know, what did that do for my energy? You know, it just kind of literally waste of breath. It's a waste of your your breath, your life essence, your life force, like, you know. And sure, you can go putting that vibration out there talking on others, or you could use it for something better.
Absolutely. So what's kind of like the one message or the message that you hope people are taking away from this entire situation?
Just to be themselves, be authentic to themselves. I think that we have to heal our taha wahine. We have to heal our femininity as a people. Like, we live in a very like masculine world, and in that masculinity is where competitiveness and capitalism really, and colonialism is really shadow masculine energy. The only way I think we're going to rebalance within ourselves and within a people is to bring back that divine feminine. So that is the person that would bring everyone together to actually have a talanoa in private, because it considers, you know, the family, you know. It's that divine nurturing mama energy that is needed for this world. And I think that, you know, this is the time for brown women, our generation, to actually be themselves and not listen to what everyone else wants us to be like, and actually just be ourselves, because all our uniqueness is going to bring the solutions that Aotearoa and our islands need for these bigger issues, which are all political, and they're all going to require a high level of emotional, intellectual, and spiritual intelligence and fortitude. And our inner our inner sanctuary as a people, our relationship with self, and your God, our creator, is really what we need to focus on. It's that. That's it.
That's beautiful. And honestly,
what about you? I want to know what do you think the message is that we need for this time?
For me, it's seeing the danger of gossiping. I think I'm guilty. I'm not saying I've never gossiped in my life. Of course I've gossiped in my life.
Guilty.
Everyone has.
We're guilty.
Yeah.
Own it, integrate it.
Exactly. And I move in and out of spaces all the time, where some spaces I'll see people the main topic is a person. And it's how you conduct yourself in a situation if you are in that situation. The message for me is if you are put in a position where some people are talking about gossip or other people, just step back and let it happen and remove yourself from the situation. If you're just partaking in it or listening to it, you're actually you're part of the problem to why it happens. And this happens so much in Samoan communities. Like, the gossip is real. and our people have talks about it all the time. And it's joked about. You know, in churches, you've seen the skits, two mums like gossiping about another lady, and it's so ugly. And I wish people knew how ugly it was. And we try to practice more healthier speaking, how we speak to each other, healthier languages to each other. And it's okay to be positive to each other, because I feel like it's hard for us to share good things that we like about each other, but it's very easy for us to go and dog someone else in a private conversation. Or if something good is happening to someone else, we just be quiet and we not give them their flowers. So for me, that's kind of like the message, and I just give it up to you for being so strong and handling it well, because it's in the public as well. People are digging into your stories and trying to put their 2 cents in. And I know you're a strong woman. Like, I know you're just like, nyeh.
If they want to go digging, there's a lot of... Look, my 20s were spicy. There's a whole bunch of stuff out there about me. And at the end of the day, I own all of it. And that's really what it is for me.
Yeah.
There's nothing that anyone can weaponize against me that I haven't already faced and probably hated myself. But that's why I live by it. It's my journey, because when everyone's done talking and having their say, you still got to go back to your life, and I still got to go back to mine. So, you know, and I just always count on my hand the 5 people whose opinion matters is myself, my partner, and my 3 children. And if you're outside that group of people, I really might hurt my ego, might embarrass me, might whatever, but the more you can accept it, you just kind of learn to go with the punches, I think, a little bit. But I did want to ask, like, what, with the experience that you've had over the last couple of weeks, you know, there's been a lot of, you know, gossiping, rumors, bullying. Like, what are some moments that have really, like, challenged you about the reception to your humble video?
I think the most challenging part for me was people bringing up my past and things that I've done previously and digging up things that I had done. It wasn't that I was ashamed of it, because I know who I am. It's because I knew that information was given to people that I trusted and I loved. And that felt like a sense of betrayal to me. So that was the hardest thing to come to terms with. And I had to switch completely. Who should I trust? What kind of information do I tell people? And in that whole thing, it kind of unveiled to me who was for me and who wasn't for me. And to me, it's a blessing, but it's a blessing that was painful. Yeah. And so standing in that was the hardest thing for me. All of the hate comments and, you know, like death threats, it actually didn't hurt me that much.
You got death threats?
I got like 400 messages of people wanting to kill me. It's crazy. What? And I'm just like, how can you let one video make you want to kill someone? That, in my mind, it was that, you know.
But this is how normalized the violence towards brown women is.
Yeah.
And it's like there are actual predators on these podcasts who have literally, you know, tens of victims who have shared their story. Where's the same outrage for them? You know, I think the normalization of violence towards our young brown women, it's disgusting. We need to clean that up. Like, you know, the wahine is the whare tangata. Without the woman, you don't got your lineage, you don't got your, you know, without the wu mei, you do not have a people. You do not have a hapu, you do not have a Samoa.
Exactly.
Without the woman, without the child bearers.
We are the portal.
That's right. Damn right. You know, how dare they?
Yeah.
You know, and we mustn't allow it as wahine. We mustn't allow that these tani continue to desecrate our tapu in these ways. You know, because that's disgusting that people were threatening your life.
It's really bad. Like, I know men who have said worse things and they just, no one cares. They can't just let it go. I feel like I was an easier target as well because I was a woman and I was brown and it was the setup as well, the podcast.
Young.
Yeah. So all of those things. And this is why young people are afraid to speak up for this exact reason, is that if they were to express themselves freely in a vulnerable way that's true to them, no matter what that sounds like, you have to have the respect to be like, that's okay. I respect your point of view. But after that, there were so many people supporting what I was saying. I feel like there were more supporters and there were angry people. And they didn't speak out for exactly that reason. The comment section, just go into the comment section. But I want to stand true on my message for the people who it resonates with. And I don't want to fold for the people who are just trying to put me down just so they can go home and have a giggle about it. Because for them, it's just a little drama. For me, it's the hill I've been dying on the last 5 years of how important Samoa culture is to the world. Like that's a saying that I have, like the world needs Samoa and how it's structured, how we talk to each other, and the values and core values of Samoan culture is so important. And like we talked about before, I'm strongly rooted. I've spent the last years of my life being rooted in God and being rooted in culture. All of these comments mean nothing. I've seen my family go through worse than me. So I feel like I was prepared for this moment.
Yeah, you did tell me a little bit about your family, which I found was really interesting because your whānau started basically the political landscape of Samoa, right?
Well, we didn't start it, but we were part of the process. So my grandfather, he was the Prime Minister of Samoa, and then my other grandfather, which is my dad's father, he was part of forming HRPP, you know, with a brother of his and other members who were in that. So I come from a family who's always in the midst of fire. And even to this day, like I have uncles who've been in the midst of fire. And what I find most admirable about it is how they just, in the chaos, they're calm. And they kind of just like, this is what's happening. We're going to move forward. Where are we going to move now? And so I think I'm blessed to have inherited that from my family, that even amongst chaos, I know who I am. I know who I'm grounded in. And I'm blessed to be from a lineage like that. So it's important for me to, whatever I do or whoever I'm platforming next to, is to elevate that message, because I don't want to waste their work that they've come a long way to do. And I wouldn't say it's shoes to fill. I would say it's just where I feel right, where I feel right being in this position. So yeah, all my life has prepared me for this moment. The stories from my mom and dad about what they had to go through when both their parents were in politics, how busy it was, the controversy their own parents had to face, and dealing with village politics and things like that. And even to this day, my family now, who are still in politics, they've been crucified and burnt alive by a Samoan community. So I feel like I was prepared for this moment. And I'm thankful for that. It's not something that just happened like out of luck, because people thought that. They were like, oh, you just did that for clickbait, for views. I was like, nah, this is a a series of events
Yeah.
that got me to this point.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, but it's crazy. And I think the other thing I wanted to talk to you about was motherhood, because I think my journey as a mom made me stronger as well. When I had my daughter, her name, chose her name because God saves. That's literally what she was for me. She saved my life in taking things more seriously. How has your journey been with motherhood?
Motherhood, yeah. I mean, so I had my first son, I had him at 20 or 21. And yeah, that was met with a, young mum at the time was met with a lot of criticism, I guess. And that's what inspired me to actually start writing Baby Mamas Club, because myself and a few of my friends were all young mums. We were all, actors and just really clever, thoughtful, socially aware young women, but we would go for all these roles that just didn't reflect our lives as women who are in our younger 20s, because we were mothers. So that was a really interesting lens on the world, I think. And again, like thinking about indigeneity and how our wahine were having children much younger than what we are conditioned to have them now. And so accepting like motherhood younger, I don't think I would be so tough. A lot of my friends were partying and traveling overseas, and I was responsible for a whole new person, and then still trying to get myself through uni, and then through film school, learning directing, writing and producing. So I feel that becoming a mother young really grounded me quickly. And I think that's why I achieved so much a lot younger, because I had matured quite quickly, which I think in the beginning is great, but then you grow up, and like I'm in my 30s now, and I'm learning how to bring back some of my inner child, because when you're, especially in film and TV, like I missed so many milestones with my children because I was the breadwinner, and we were working 14, 16-hour days. Like my last baby, I missed him walking for the first 2 weeks that he was walking, because I was getting up at 4 a.m, going to work and coming back when he was in bed. So, there was a lot of sacrifice on behalf of my children for me to have the career that I had and have in film and TV. But since the protest, it actually gave me an opportunity to stop and go back to looking after myself and my children, and actually getting to know them and getting to work on that family unit. Because what I've realized in the chaos of this whole world is, if your house isn't in order, if your family is not in order, and your relationship with your children isn't strong, then you can go out there and serve all the communities you want, but actually the people you need to serve the most is your own family, right at home. And especially those children, those, tamariki, tamaariki, our children are very neglected in our society. They're very not listened to. I think as parents we need to actually tune into our children a lot more. If we're in spaces where they're not settled, there's probably energies there that they're picking up on that we can't, and I think as parents, we would be really wise to actually gain some insight from our children. That is what our tipuna did. There were children that were raised from babies to be commanding and navigating entire villages. And that's something, again, that colonization done. It told us children are to be seen and not heard, but actually children should be the most seen in our families. And I think as a society, when we can learn to recenter our children and our mothers, again, we're going to start to heal. But yeah, that's kind of my current journey, is just trying to be a good moms.
Yeah, I can relate to that, especially in regards to the It grounded you really quick having a child. I had a baby at 22.
Wow.
And then something in me just switched it. It just went into provider mode. Like, now I have to be something. There's someone looking at me. I have to be a better person now. And you're right. You've achieved so much, in your lifetime, that a lot of people will be like, holy crap, I didn't think I'll be able to do that till I'm like 40. So well done on everything that you've done and accomplished. I loved both of your films, Baby Mama's Club and Sis. And to be honest, I would have been, when I first saw it, I was like, I'm not going to like this. It looks too corny. And then when I watched it, I was like, holy crap, I enjoy this. I actually relate to it so much. So your work is speaking volumes to so many people. And we had a talk about this over the phone, how important messaging is and why these things must be protected. Platforms, money, that resources, important messages that goes out to our communities. That's the last question I wanted to ask you is, how important is that and for people to be accountable in the industry?
Yeah, well, story sovereignty is something we talk a lot about. And, people have asked, what is story sovereignty? And I'm not sure if I really got the best pitch for it at the moment, but basically, in Barry Barclay's words, it's for us, by us, of us. And so, yeah, it talks about Indigenous storytelling being from a collective perspective, but from being the people themselves, and also controlling it from top to bottom, controlling the purse strings, controlling, every facet of it. And in film and TV in particular, it's been a long journey for brown people to actually own and produce and tell our own stories. We still have a culture of having to go into these kind of co-productions or partnerships, and again, there's still one dominant force in them, and it's usually the Pākehā production company, because they've got the credits. So to the funding agencies, they're more reliable, or they've got, the rapport. And so the contracts are in the name of the Pākehā producer or production company. But I just think not even just for film and TV, but as humans as a whole right now, narrative and story is power, and earlier we were talking about the Christian institution, like, the Bible being told through the lens of the Roman Catholics, like they held the story, they have the control. And that's why when we see Jesus, he's not tan Middle Eastern guy, he's got blue eyes and fair skin. Like, it's who controls the story, controls the lens, controls the narrative, controls the minds of the people. And we are at both physical and spiritual warfare right now, as journalists, as media personalities, storytellers, filmmakers, actors, podcasters. We are messengers at the end of the day, and we have to really consider what messages we're putting out to the people. So if we look at our world right now, that's happening. We're in a big circus and we're all being distracted, but who is actually being used to do that? It's the storytellers, and so we have to really consider, like, what are the real, or what are the true, what are the tututu and pono narratives and stories? And if you're a messenger of those, then how are you going to bring those through to serve the people? Serve the people.
That's beautiful. I love that.
What about you?
In regards
to
the
yeah, because I love, I love when you told me about the whakatauaki for your company.
Yeah, for me, it's just my whole thing is like Samoa. I like Samoa because how it's structured, like it's how it works, our values. And so for me, all the funding that's available for Pacific and Indigenous storytelling must be honored in that sense, that it reflects our people and represents our people. So I just want to make sure that in these spaces, that voices are being told and heard truthfully, like you said, story sovereignty. And there's this whole thing that we have to kind of make Pacific stories a bit like Bālangi on how we advertise and market it, and because it'll get clicks or viewership. But I don't believe in that. I believe that our stories are people will like them if they're told honestly and truthfully. We don't have to always put a little, controversial spin on it to make it relevant. I think they are relevant, and I don't think the stories need to change or twisted to suit a narrative. I feel like people should train themselves to view stories honestly as they are presented, and we shouldn't water them down or make them look fun or to appease to audiences. That's how I feel. And I'm all for that, because what makes us as Samoan people strong is the truth in our stories. It's not how we water them down for people so that they could achieve an outcome that they think is relevant, because the truth will always remain the truth. And if we're trying to appease to how people feel, that's where I feel it can get murky, I guess.
Yeah, it's the commercializing of our stories, and again, like putting it through a certain lens, so that this is why I get real icky about like historical things being redone and re-dramatized, because it's like, whose lens are we looking through? Who gets to tell that historical moment or event? It's it can shape the entire way that a people view themselves. But we need to discern and be more critically aware of who gets to tell our stories and why.
Yeah.
What's their intention of telling our stories if they don't come from those people? If they're not from those communities, if they don't whakapapa, what is their intention for telling that story? Because most of the time it goes back to the money.
Exactly. And
give me my money.
Yeah. And if it's just worth money, oh my gosh, I don't think that's honorable in any way. Like, our stories are worth so much more than money. And then people try to justify, why a story, the story sovereignty should leave, because it gives opportunities to writers and job opportunities to photographers. I'm just like, I don't care where they get their bag, to be honest. Go somewhere else to get your money, but don't say that those opportunities should be the reason why these people should give up their story sovereignty. But that's just my 2 cents about it. Yeah.
Film and TV actually rivals the forestry industry here in Aotearoa. So it's a huge trigger for other economic departments of our government, and it's Māori and Pacific stories that are the most profitable. They give them out to those pre-approved production companies and producers because they have those credits, but they're the same people that have been telling brown people stories for like decades. It starts to become a little bit of a political agenda when the same people are telling brown people's stories. Because if you look at like the representation of Māori people on screen in dramatized settings, 60% of it is gang storylines. And I know that most modern Māori are sick of being portrayed as gangsters and criminals. That's not to say there's not a place for our gang whānau, but they're not the ones telling their story. It's some Pākehā from Ponsonby, which used to be brown. See, they take everything. Ponsonby was Pacific, god damn it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so true. But actually, I just have one more question for you. We usually round up the show with something called hot take or words of encouragement. So if you want to share a hot take or if you want to share words of encouragement, take your pick.
This is what got you in trouble the last time.
Yes.
Hot take. Here's my hot take. On the last day of my 33rd birthday this year, a matua and walked into the whare that we were living at, and he had been holding on to a prophecy for 40 years that had come back from Rapa Nui. So he had sat at the feet of these elders in Rapa Nui and Hawaii for like a decade and had learnt with them about the migration of Māori to Aotearoa. And so I say to this matua, well, why are you telling me about this? This has been like a 40-year-old secret. And he said, because I'm preparing you, he says. When he was in Rapa Nui, this old man had been dreaming of him like had been dreaming of him his whole life, that this Māori chief would return and he was going to tell him about how Māori came to Aotearoa. So 1,000 years ago, our tipuna left Rapa Nui, and we were from the 8 or the 7 kingdoms of Hawaii. So we were from all the islands. And they put our ariki, our high chiefs, our high priests, and, you know, some taurekarika, some workers, on these 7 waka. And these 7 waka came from Rapa Nui down to Aotearoa. And that is marked by the moai heads over in Rapa Nui that face towards Aotearoa. Just where I've come from in the weekend, I hear a kōrero from another hapu that's talking about this kind of, they call it a 1,000-year prophecy. And it's about the reuniting of Hawaii, right? So the kōrero is that we were sent here, Māori, 1,000 years ago, because our tipuna were basically, we knew we had the last priesthood on earth, and, you know, the powers that be knew that the last bastion of spirituality was in the Pacific. And our tipuna, knowing that they were going to come, shut down the priesthood and brought it here to Aotearoa. And it really landed with me because I always knew inherently. I mean, you look at our reo, you look at our atua, you know, Maui being one of them, the similarities between us all as Moana Nui a Kiwa are as brothers and sisters. You know, we are of one people. How we can live in the same whenua and not feel that here we've lost the story. And for me, we've lost the prophecy of our old people that came here 1,000 years ago. So my hot take is that, you know, Hawaii tanga, Hawaii nui, Hawaii roa, Hawaii pāmama, we are one people. And my hot take is that one people, if we don't get it together here in Aotearoa, there'll be nothing for Māori, Pacific Islanders, or anyone else. And that's what we need to actually, you know, looking beyond this drama, we need to see how we can come together as Samoans, as Māori, as all of us together, because it was prophesied for our people at this very time.
That's your hot take.
This
Breaking waves. Thank you.